Let's now consider our interest rates. So there's two that we need to focus on when we're dealing with bonds. First is the yield to maturity. And again, consider this the lifelong interest rate over the course of the entire bond. Okay, this is set by both the willing buyer and the seller, an agreement based on the economic conditions and the risk factors associated with that bond. And in terms of figuring out the yield to maturity, we can use our TVM equations, okay, and just consider it our interest rate that we've been using previously. More importantly, it's going to help us if we already have the yield to maturity, we can understand how to solve for the price of that bond or the present value of that bond. Second interest rate, or the other interest rate, is our coupon rate. So consider this coupon rate as your annual rate. In other words, it's what's going to help us understand what annual payments the bond is going to pay out. Okay, now this is set by the company. Okay, again, here's an example here. We have a 7% coupon rate. If our par value is $1,000, $70 will be paid out each year on that bond. Okay, reminder to remember whether or not it's an annual or if it's semi-annual, because that's definitely going to make an adjustment on the payments and also other calculations. Now, the relationship between the two rates, what's really important to understand is this. So, if our coupon rate is greater than our yield to maturity, what that means ultimately is that our annual payments are going to be greater than the overall interest payments or interest accumulated over the loan. So in other words, we're paying for a premium for that, because that's considered a premium bond. Now, in other words, also, when we pay a premium, think of the price going up. Okay, so you pay more for a bond like this because you're getting high coupon payments every year. Of course, if it's a par value is equal, then the coupon and the yield to maturity are equal and the price is equal to the par value. Now, discount bond, and if we recall from our zero coupon bonds, they're considered a pure discount bond. And remember why? Well, zero coupon bonds pay, well, as the name suggests, zero annual payments or zero coupons throughout the lifelong period of the bond. Okay, so if a coupon bond or the rate is zero or lower than the yield to maturity, then that also means the price will be discounted. Therefore, it's a discount bond. Now, there are deep discount bonds. They might have a very low coupon rate, but they're certainly lower than the yield to maturity. Another relationship to consider is ultimately when interest rates go up, okay, the bond prices go down. So imagine interest rates ultimately driven by, let's say, inflation. When the inflation goes up, the value of those bonds are going to go down. Now, in regards to the ratings of our bonds, so we've seen AAA ratings versus C and D. Ultimately, that rating is going to be based off of the default premium. Okay, so if we recall from Chapter 5, what we mean by default is, the likelihood of that company being able to pay out the bond. So if you have a highly top-rated bond, then it's a stable bond, and most likely you're going to get those annual payments, and you'll get it till the end of its maturity. However, the only drawback is that you're going to have a lower yield. If you recall from the equation, there's going to be no default premium associated. So the opposite, junk bonds are fairly low rated, okay? And because of that, that means that they're considered speculative, but they carry a higher yield. So again, imagine we're going to add that default premium, therefore the rate of return will be improved. So just a little reminder on bond ratings and the advantages and disadvantages based on the rating. Again, we can see here we have our two companies, well, three in this case, but we're more familiar with our S&P and Moody's, okay? And you can see the ratings are based off of the credits. When the credit drops, then our ratings drop. And again, we discussed junk bonds. They're somewhere below here, and there's even more speculative bonds. But again, if you do invest in bonds like this, then there might be a higher yield. So there could be some advantages of investing on a riskier, lower rated bond. Now, what are some high-rated bonds? Well, government bonds are by far in the top level. And again, if we recall, the main reason is because they're very less likely to default. Okay, so they're a guaranteed investment. Now, when we talk about government bonds, they're always called Treasury, either bills, notes, or bonds. Okay, and really the difference is the length of time of the investment. So a Treasury bill, okay, as you can see here, ranges from no greater than a year. Okay, and what's also important to understand is a Treasury bill, because they're such a short bond, they have zero coupon, so they're not returning. There is no annual payment because the bond expires in a year. So, and that's important. We'll talk about that in a moment, why that's valuable. And then if you see Treasury notes, they are mature in a longer period of time, 2 to 10, and finally bonds, 10 years or more. Okay, so in terms of calculating the price of notes and bonds, we'll get that in 1 second, but just want to show you. So you look at their ratings, okay, very high ratings. And again, the date to maturity, yield to maturity, coupon rate, these should be a little bit more familiar to you now. You can understand how we can figure out our future or present values based off of these numbers. Now, pricing a government note or bond, okay, so these again are greater than a year, typically 2 to 10 year plus, okay, and it'd be very similar to figuring out the present value that we've done so far. Okay, so again, here we have our $3,000 is paid out annually. It's over 7-year coupon. Okay, but again, because we have 14, our time here is representing the semi-annual. So it's going to, this $3,000 actually, pardon me, is actually paid out twice in 1 year. Okay, so this is actually after year 1. Okay, but again, that's why it's so important to write out that timeline and understand when the payout is happening. Now, again, we won't spend too much time on this. We'll take a look at it in our calculations, but I do want to bring up pricing a Treasury bill because it's not the same as pricing the other bills in terms of time value money. Instead, we need to use a few equations, okay? And first, we need to figure out our bank discount yield, okay? And once we have that, we can figure out our bond equivalent yield, which is similar to our APR, if you recall from our previous chapter. Okay, so we're going to be using this equation here, okay? But before we use this equation, we need an equation also for our bank discount yield, which we'll talk about later on. Also, in terms of pricing, so another important table to consider is you'll see tables like this, okay? So 4-week, 13-week, and 26-week, because it's important to understand in our equation, we need to know the days to maturity, okay? So we need to reference tables like this to be able to precisely calculate it with our formulas. Now, when we price a Treasury bill, we're going to use this formula here, okay? And that's going to help us get the price of our Treasury bill. But again, think of it as this is the future value, okay? So $10,000, if you recall from our beautiful math classes we've had. And this is our present value. So the money, basically that value is moving backwards, and it should be discounted at some rate. But again, we can use this simple calculation, and we'll be using this calculation as well to figure out our equivalent yield. So if you've taken a look at the learning objectives, please continue with the readings and begin on the homework to get a deeper understanding. Thanks for watching, and happy financing.